second anti-racist action webinar that the Goodpush has put on. Today, myself, Rhiannon, and Wendy will all be co-facilitators, co-hosts of the session. And it's a public holiday in South Africa, and Wendy's working anyways to help us out. So thank you, Wendy, for making that sacrifice. We'll introduce ourselves in just a second, but first I just want to give a short recap of the last session. So in the last session, Mbali, the general manager from Skatestan South Africa, shared a bit of her own insights and experiences. And then we heard from many other people in the groups or in the group about their own insights about racism that they may have experienced or witnessed in their programs or just in their personal worlds. And from that discussion, we sort of teased out three themes or three areas where racism might play out structurally, like in the system of social skate. And that's in our programs, in our organizational structure, like how the organization is built, and also in terms of funding and who gets access to funding, who can use crowdfunding tools and all that, as well as like the reporting on funding. So those are the three topics that we're gonna dive into today a little deeper, and Rhiannon's is in the process of making some breakout groups. So we'll spend 15 to 20 minutes in these smaller groups having a discussion, and then we'll come back and share our insights with everybody else. And then hopefully by the end of the hour, we'll have some concrete kind of next steps, actions that we can take as a community. So first of all, who are we? I'm Talia, I'm the programs director with Skatestan, and I work closely with Rhiannon on the Goodpush Alliance. I also work closely with Wendy and Mbali and the South African team, as well as the teams of the different countries where Skatestan works. Yeah, I'm not an expert on the topic, but I've been reading and learning, and I think it's super important, especially in social skate. We're in a position to kind of do things differently, reinvent things. It's a new field. And it's important that we do things with excellence and challenge racism and not just take on the structures of the dominant international development world in our work. So that's what motivates me to be here. Yeah, Rhiannon, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I guess most of you have been in touch with, but I'm the Goodpush Alliance program manager at Skatestan. I've been working at Skatestan on and off since 2010 in lots of different areas. And yeah, with Goodpush, we're just trying to, I don't know, create spaces where we can all connect and share with each other. And this year with COVID happening, we ended up starting these webinar series, and we just kind of like go with the flow with topics and see which ones are interesting to people. And yeah, I think this is a really important one, and I'm glad to see so many people joining this. So thanks for coming.
Wendy, and then maybe Wendy can explain like exactly a little bit more about why we're here, what we're doing.
Okay, cool. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Wendy Ngwenya, and I am an educator at Skatestan South Africa. My key roles involve curriculum development, as well as facilitation and writing student growth stories, and also being part of the phenomenal Goodpush team. All right. So in a minute or so, I will just share with you guys the purpose of this webinar today. All right. So we are a community of organizations working on inclusiveness and equality. Okay, we are here to learn from each other and willingness to take action. So we have to also keep in mind that this is a safe place to share our own experiences, and it's okay, you know. And then as well as we are here to focus mainly on systemic racism, which is racism that shows up in organizations, society at large, and systems of government like migration and immigration and education. All right, so we won't promise to solve all the problems that we may come across today, but surely we can start to identify structural racism that plays out in our own spaces. And we also have to keep in mind that we are also, like Talia has mentioned, we're not experts, all right, in defining or solving racism, but we're also here to identify solutions together and suggest some of the ways we can work forward together. Yes, so that's why we're here.
Thanks so much, Wendy. And Wendy mentioned, like, we want this to be a safe space, so I'm just going to put forward some discussion guidelines, and if people have other suggestions, please, you can raise your hand or write them in the chat, and we'll incorporate those as well. So as Wendy mentioned, we are here to learn from each other, but it's not the job of Black people, Indigenous people, and other people of color to educate white people about privilege and racism. So any sharing that happens is voluntary, and no undue like expectation can be put on people of color in this space. We also want to assume that feedback is coming from a good place and kind of be here with an open mind to learn and to grow. So sometimes we might hear feedback, like as people with privilege and white people in this space, that might not make us feel very good or cause us to feel defensive. And now's the time to put those feelings kind of aside and not react, and just sit with that and think about it, and not put that like into the space. But we do encourage people to be open and share if you feel safe to do so. And really, if we let ourselves be a bit vulnerable, admit that we're learning, we can make some mistakes and learn from them, then we can really move forward, I think. I also do want to acknowledge the generosity of time and spirit of racialized people in the space that are essentially here to help solve a problem that you didn't create, and it's not your problem to solve. So thank you for that energy in the space, and let's keep our main goal in mind, which is dismantling racism and prejudice in social skate. And when you're in the groups, try to encourage each other to contribute, make space for lots of different perspectives and voices. So yeah, I'd like to also put it forward to you. Does anybody have any expectations? What will make a good session? Let's agree on any other requirements that people may have. Or can people agree on these guidelines for a start?
You can do a yes if you want, the participants chat. Here we go. That's okay. Okay, wait. Everyone agrees. We say yes.
All right. Thank you. Great. Okay, so Rhiannon's working on splitting up groups, or they are split up. So what will happen is you'll get kind of removed for a second from this main space. Don't hang up. You'll find yourself in one of these discussions, and then they do kind of abruptly end eventually. So I think we'll try to give notice.
There's like a timer that shows you what's going on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have 15 or 20 minutes?
Like 15, I think is good.
Okay, we're gonna do 15 minutes, and then we'll try to appoint one person in each group to present our recommendations or findings or insights to everybody when we come back. So thank you.
All right, cool. I'm gonna open them now. So you should get a request to be transported away. So there we go.
But we can't hear Aisha and Max.
Hey, oh, you got two people there. Cool.
Yeah, so it's me as well, Felix, as well as Anne.
Nice.
Hi guys.
Yes.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, if people want to, feel free to unmute yourselves. Since we're only a small group, you can do that. If you have big background noise, you can stay muted, whatever you want to do. So you have all been transported into the group that is, we're focusing on the topic of organizational structure. So this is, I guess, talking about maybe inclusion and diversity, like within our organizations, and what we can do to make like our hierarchies and decision making as anti-racist as possible. Yeah, and countering like structural racism as much as possible. So I have like maybe some questions we could use to get started, unless people have like some general input on this topic that they just want to put out there.
Now go for it. Give us the questions.
All right. Okay. So I would ask, maybe some of the people here and their organizations want to talk a little bit about like what, like currently at your organizations, like what do your like hierarchies and decision making look like? Like, is it like management teams? Is it boards? And then within those teams, like, how do you feel like your organization is doing so far in terms of, yeah, like diversity and inclusion of diverse voices?
I can start.
All right, Max, going for it.
I mean, so I work for an arts nonprofit. I work for a museum. And we have a pretty bad situation as far as diversity in management goes. We have one director who kind of deals with all of the decision making in our business. And then we have a board of directors who she consults with, but is also not representative of where we are. And we identified that as employees as a problem, and we kind of pitched it to our director as an issue, but we actually don't know how to go about solving that problem as far as recruiting the right people or recruiting people in general, or even just getting decisions past the one director who kind of has all the power. We are a lot of younger staff, so it makes it kind of hard to throw weight around in a nonprofit or just in any organization. So I think we have issues there as far as making sure that the leadership in our organization is reflective of where we are and who represents our place, as well as like who the leadership is responsible for, I guess, like the board of directors.
Yeah, cool. No, thanks. That's interesting to share, because I think we have like people with a range of backgrounds, like people that are maybe on like a kind of director team or maybe a founder level, and then people that, yeah, like you say, you don't maybe have necessarily so much influence in the organization. So it's interesting to think about how you can find ways to change things from lower levels, I guess.
Yeah, we've been using the word accountability a lot. Like we want to hold,
cool.
we want to hold our direction and our leadership accountable, and we are looking for ways that we can do that. You know, and as lower level employees, we're really interested in that conversation as well.
Okay. Awesome, cool. Maybe Steve, do you want to talk about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Does this work? Awesome. So I run an organization. I'm the executive director. We're based in New Jersey, and I'm one of the founders. And Max, I like the word that you used. I think you said it was, we have a bad situation. And I feel very much like we have a bad situation here. Essentially, I've been running this since 2003, and we've had a diverse staff through the years. And at one time it was just like 50-50. However, I will say we did have some female representation at times, but right now there's just not very much at all, especially with our board of directors. And so that's what I'm working on. We actually have a board meeting tonight, so I'm looking forward to taking some of this information and really challenging my team, which is all white men, and does not represent at all our people in all of our different skate programs. So that is problematic.
Yeah.
I have some work to do.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. I think that's the situation that a lot of people are in, and maybe I see we have a couple people here from Skateistan, Felix and Anne. Maybe you guys want to talk about where Skateistan has found themselves this year.
No, I don't want to talk about that. But no, I was just thinking about, like what is diversity? I think about South Africa, for example, and I'm finance director at Skatistan. And we have, in South Africa, we have an amazing but pretty young team. And I found, like we have employed a new finance officer as of June this year. And she's a little bit older, and so there were like a lot of questions I had were around the inclusiveness, like how to include her as well, like in this team, which is like fast moving and so like
full of a bunch of young skaters.
Yes, as well. Like I think there is a question about like to define diversity. Diversity can be like the origin of people. It can be age. It can be like physical, physical criteria as well. But I think it's really really broad, and it can change from one country to another as well. So
yeah.
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 Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, please. It was just like in addition to
no, that's true. I think last time, for this, we want to focus, I guess, on like more around the Black Lives Matter and Black Indigenous people of color. But like something that Mbali mentioned in South Africa, for example, that they have is like colorism as well. So like people being racist towards other like people that are Black, but against people depending on skin tone and stuff like this. So it is needing to be defined in each context for sure, I think. Felix, do you want
to? Yeah, I was just going to say that where Skateistan sort of found itself in terms of identifying these kind of elements of society's structural racism and how that kind of plays out in our in our organizational structure. Now, essentially, there's a lot of elements in terms of like the structure of authority within our different kind of skate schools. So each school is like a different registered NGO, and as far as that goes, like the sort of the person with the highest authority will always be representative of the community that we're working with, and so with boards usually. I think our founder and executive director is on most of those boards, sits on most of those boards, but typically they are pretty representative of the communities we work in. Where the difficulty comes in is like our international advisory board that kind of oversees our international organisation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we noticed, and I think one thing that Skateistan has kind of always focused on is like a sort of gender balance, and because it's so core to our mission that at times we have we've certainly overlooked other kind of avenues of inclusion. And then when it comes down to the international organisation, and we have an office based here in Berlin. And I'm not entirely sure what the percentage is, but it's majority, kind of majority, and not only majority white, but majority kind of sort of middle class white, a lot of very similar kind of backgrounds, which I actually think is representative of a wider problem in the international development sector as well. That it's kind of it's a big problem with our industry as well. Like our situation is not. It doesn't exist out within a bubble, do you know what I mean? It's like it is a part of a much wider problem, and certainly the kind of movements this year have kind of really, have really kind of brought it to the forefront of everyone's kind of consciousness at the moment. And we also have again. A kind of, I think we have 60 or 70% women in management positions, but basically our entire directors team is white, and nearly and the majority of our board too. So it's so as kind of Stephen and Max mentioned, these problems are kind of they occur industry wide as well. It's not just in your organizations.
And Aisha, Monica, how's it? What do you think?
Can you listen? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Hi. How are you all?
Good.
Hi,
Nice to
Aisha.
see you. You're in Dhaka, Bangladesh, yeah?
Yeah, I'm in Bangladesh, Dhaka, capital, in the capital. Basically, I'm working with Arno Kalo Foundation, AAF, and I used to work with BSK, Bangladesh Street Kids Aid, and we are working, both organizations are working with street children. And I mean, in the way we work with street children, I mean, it's if it is racism, I mean, if I'm clear enough, I don't know, I'm a bit confused, but still, we work with street children and they live on the street. So definitely, it's the color. Color, it doesn't mean, you know, you need to be direct black, but they're darker skin. And we face, you know, bad attitude from other people. And that's, you know, hits our kid directly. And it's definitely, it's not a good sign for them, you know, for grown up, or, you know, they're getting abused by words. Hey, Kala, I mean, hey, black, go ahead. I mean, go from here. Don't enter here. I mean, this kind of thing we always face, but we always try to, you know, face those things boldly and, you know, defeat them. Like, you can't say that they are human. I'm human. So these are things, I mean, yeah. And our kids mostly lives on the street, and hardly they can have shower and you know, they get I mean normal thing like the way we do. We have, you know, all the facilities in our home, in our, you know, family. But yeah, these are problem. And they're, I mean, fewer darker skin, but yeah, mostly they get abused by the people, surrounding people, in the field, in the park. Yeah. And yeah, we should raise our voice, and, you know, we should shut their mouth. And, you know, I mean, they must treat everyone as a human. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Message.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting for sure. And I wonder, Monica, how it is in Bangladesh, if it's difficult with the colorism or this kind of stuff for people to break out of that, you know, to get an education and to get, you know, good jobs, and to, you know, like how many people that come from these backgrounds are like running NGOs in Bangladesh right now, you know?
More than 2000
Yeah.
plus.
Okay.
So it's government, you know, they got
2000 NGOs in Bangladesh.
Yeah, 2000 plus.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we are working for NGO paperwork as well.
Yeah.
We are collaboratively working with BSK, and we both are like one mother, two children.
Yeah.
So yeah, and hopefully by December, I mean, you know, definitely, like, you know, our land progress, the demarcation, land already demarcated. So we can start our work. I mean, if everything gets much better, you know, we already put some dirt for the roads already, you know, 28 tracks. So yeah, those are on process. And today I came from Gajipur, where our project will be. And I went through, you know, different offices. So there I got few good news, and I'm going to, you know, have those people who will come for build a skate park. I'm sorry, I'm just going in another direction. Just I'm giving a little bit updates. I mean, probably the mayor from Gajipur, where we are going to do our work, they are going to help us, you know, for build our skate park and I mean, artship building. Yeah.
Cool. That sounds like an awesome project.
Yeah. I was going to ask, are there any opportunities for those kids to become leaders, or like to end up working for the NGO?
From our perspective, our side?
Yeah. Do any of those kids that, I mean, if they're old enough or if they show enough dedication, are there opportunities for them to
Of course.
to lead?
Definitely. I
Oh,
mean,
cool.
they are going to be a global citizen. Definitely. That's we're going to do that, and they're human like us, and they have more potential. Sometimes I feel more than me. Yeah, and they're going to do that, and they will achieve that, and they're going to have that opportunity. Yes.
Cool.
That's been quite key to Skaterstan over the years as well. Student kind of involvement, and we have like a pretty. I don't know if anyone else has the Rhiannon or Anne, if you have the percentage off the top of your heads, but like the percentage of staff, current staff now that were students at some stage.
At some point,
yeah,
it was like 60 or 70% at one point at the skate schools, which was really cool because I mean, kind of similar to what Monica was talking about, especially in Afghanistan, we had a lot of like former street working kids, and then they were able to become teachers. So I think that's like an ideal way to, you know, really make sure that you're representing, especially like for us where we're working with participants in different contexts to like, shift towards that. Because I mean, I started Skatestand as a white Canadian girl going to Afghanistan. I don't know how relevant that
now
is.
you're an Afghan girl.
But
Working journey.
Is that the same for like director positions and board members too? Like, or is that a different situation?
We have a woman called Banafsha who was like an educator on in Kabul. How many years ago? 7-8 years ago. She is on the international advisory board now. But that's kind of one example there, really.
there's in Afghanistan one former student, a woman, is on the board, but she was from
on the board in Afghanistan.
Yeah, but she was from a kind of more privileged background. She studied engineering. Yeah, but yeah.
I always wondered how boards get formed. I mean, I don't know.
Steve, how does your board get formed?
That is so I can share how my board was formed, but is what I'm trying to figure out is how to bring on new members. I've got so many different people in mind that I would like to invite to the team, but I don't know. Part of what we're talking about tonight is, I guess, how to decide. But in the past couple of years, it's really just been friends, a few major donors that are expressing essentially like, hey, I love what you're doing. So most of my donors are like, you know, very relationship based. So as I'm, you know, continuing the friendship and trying to get those people more involved, board leadership is one way. So
it's usually volunteer, right?
Yeah, it's all volunteer led. The board is.
We were wondering at our place if there was if there are like ever examples of people getting paid to be a board member, and that might make it so that there are like more opportunities for people who maybe come from different situations.
Yeah,
that's a really good question.
Yeah,
I don't know that one, but
I guess in that case, you'd probably be more like a paid kind of consultant for strategy and direction in the organization. I think like most board members are doing that voluntarily, certainly in NGOs, as far as I know.
Yeah, I think there might be laws, and it might change from country to country, but I feel like there's laws. They might not be preventing it, but I think at least in some countries there might be because of like conflict of interest stuff.
Yeah,
but I think
100% in England that's the case.
Yeah. You're not like you're supposed to be the one that's making sure that the organization is doing the right thing. So you shouldn't be making money, but it is a good question though, because that just means it's like the wealthy people who have the time to volunteer. Oh, we have
100%.
Yeah.
Aisha?
Monica.
Monica, sorry.
Yeah, please. The thing is, in my country, I mean, in our memorandum, there is no option. I mean, I'm a founder and CEO of Arno Kalu Foundation, AAF. But, you know, I started my work with Susan and Hassel. I mean, she's the founder of BSK. It's the organization is in California. So she came here and she started, you know, working with these street children long back, almost 12 years back. 2007, she came. And I met with her in 2016. But after I heard her all the story, I mean, what she had, went through in our country with bad experience. She got cheated with money and blah, blah, blah. I'm a totally different background person. I mean, I'm a media professional. I'm a director. But the thing is, while I heard her story, I wanted to help her, and I wanted to, help in every way. Like she wanted to buy a piece of land in Bangladesh, and I wanted to build a skate park anywhere that can be anywhere. And few people asked her like, okay, you'll get some land here, there, and they took money from her. So I mean, she earlier, when she said everything, every negative thing, as a Bangladeshi, I felt really sad, and like that happened with a foreign person who came to help our street children in our country, and she got cheated. I mean, few times. So anyway, I mean, then later on, I talked with my brother, and he wanted to donate a piece of land, like 16,000 square feet, and that was a huge thing for us, And then we both started to form a INGO, but that takes huge money. I think you guys all know the Rohingya issue. I mean, the Myanmar country people is coming in our country, almost 1 million, plus. So that it's got up the price. Fees are got up. So we decide, okay, I'm a Bangladeshi, so I can form the organization, and we can implement BSK's goal, mission, vision, and AF and BSK, these are the same mission and vision, but it's taking less money. But the thing is, I'm not getting paid or anything. My main point is, right now I'm coming because I had to go through the back history. I formed this organization. Yeah, I have huge, big people in my organization, like 7 committee members. There is a chairman, there is a vice chairman, there is a CEO, and there is treasurer, and then 3 executive members. But no one is. I mean, our chairman is donated, 1 piece of land. Definitely, it's a costful land, But I'm trying to do. And I had to, do all my savings, what I earned, like last 13 years, and formed an organization as a charitable organization. And I had to do all those things, but I'm not taking any money from BSK or Suzy Hustle or, that organization almost 3 years. But right now I'm in some point, like, I'm making, trying to make t-shirt or, logo or copyright things. And now we are going to, do our NGO bureau work, because we need to enter, a BSK as a core member. They're going to be the main fundraiser, or they have seen the vision and mission, and we are helping them, right?
Yeah.
So the point is, like, where I can ask for money, and how can I survive? I mean, this is like, I had to sell some costly stuff from my own thing. My family is supporting me for doing this kind of all the foundational job. And the COVID crisis, food distribution program, like this is kind of like, and BSK is kind of like, they're saying like, okay, unless we get the NGO bureau permission, we can afford or pay you money. That's fine. That's I can manage that. Time will go. But what my action will be, I don't know. I mean, it's really impossible for me. Like last 4 months, I left my career, but it's I'm not blaming anyone. I wanted to work with these 3 children. I wanted to do something for them. And I want to help Suzy, and I want to see what she has already seen last few years back.
I think
I
mean, sorry, we got to end the breakout group things, but I just want to say that thanks for sharing that, and let's connect separately about this, Monica. We can talk about this, but I think it raises a good point about how setting up an NGO requires so much time and money that a lot of people can't afford to do, especially not longer term. So I think this is kind of a bigger structural issue that also Max brought up. And Max, you have to leave?
Yes.
Okay, thanks for joining.
Yeah. Peace
All
out.
right.
Bye, Max.
Salut,
Okay.
Max.
I'm closing the room, so we'll get transported back into the other one. So people have to either choose to come or they will eventually end up here. I think I ended it for everybody, I hope. This is like the first time I'm holding a Zoom meeting, so it's all a bit new. They might just be wrapping up their discussions. Yeah, no, it's a very short amount of time. Does anyone want to say anything else while we're waiting on this topic? Yeah,
But again, it just seems like that whole as you mentioned, Rhiannon, so all these kind of parts of the industry's kind of issue, right? And how the kind of the way the whole industry has been set up kind of requires that privilege at some to make it work. And I guess that's similar to your issue, Steve, around like kind of donors ending up being authority in the board, and then that becomes less representative.
Cool. So I think we have everybody back here, and what I thought could be cool is we have someone's going to be taking notes from this session. Maybe we could just, someone from each group, whoever wants to, could share like what you kind of talked about and any kind of key points or things that popped out that just seemed to be like either the main challenges or the main actions you want to take. Maybe we could start with the programs group, and that Wendy was facilitating. Either Wendy or someone else wants to present.
Hey, that's us.
Cool.
Hey guys, so I'm just gonna kind of like go through my notes, and I'll skim through to catch the parts that stuck out to me. So the first question Wendy asked us is like, why is inclusion important to the programs that we run? And so first and foremost, we all agreed that like representing those being served is really important, both in like leadership capacities as well as like diversifying or making sure that we are asking the question about who's being left out, and then actively reaching those people and prioritizing resources so that we're serving those who need to be served. And also inclusion involves like just creating spaces where people can come together, and the differences, whether it's like sexual identity or race or gender, those differences aren't the focus, and that it's like kind of just a everyone belongs safe place to be. Somebody was mentioning that that sometimes, even though they're not in this organization, they're not doing teaching exactly, they do have like peer mentors or coaches that double as like counselors, and making sure that they're representing shifting demographics, because things have been changing a lot in the last few years in particular. So just like staying ahead of the curve on all that. The question was asked about the role of parents and families, and that's maybe coming from like a Skatiscan perspective, where children are being worked with, and similarly with our organization, but not necessarily all organizations. So that sort of branched out to just not necessarily families, but having adults in the lives of youth who can be influential. Jessica from Harold Hunter Foundation cited a study, I think it was a study, that says that 2 adults can be, you know, really impactful, 2 healthy adults in the lives that are not related to young people. But this idea of organic mentorship that isn't confined to a program space or a program time and location, but this informal, like, again, Jessica, you used a really cool phrase that I like, just creating scaffolding wherever you can, so that teens are mentoring younger kids. And even if it's an informal structure, having those values kind of passed on in an informal, organic way that is still effective. And then for our organization, I talked about just being vocal and upfront about our values, like inclusion, equality, anti-racism, anti-sexism, anti-homophobia, building trust within the community of the people that are being served, so that our organizations are known to facilitate these like spaces and to serve a wide array of people, in fact, everybody, just making sure, again, that everyone's welcome. The last thing we talked about, it was kind of near the end of our time, so we didn't get much in there, and it was to do with colorism, and that plays out in our programs, and how those are, or how that is like just apparent in our day-to-day. We didn't really get into that specifically, but just the question of, are we actively teaching anti-racism? And like teens and youth who are in our programs are often, or not often, but can be like people who seek out emotional intelligence workshops or programs, are often coming from a position of either privilege or lived experience. And a problem that we come across is that the people who really need it the most, who need to be hearing these messages, aren't the ones who are showing up. And the ones who are the ones who are like either, victims, or usually not the perpetrators of violence or discrimination or whatever it happens to be. So trying to figure out how to reach those people who need it the most, and also being able to teach like healthy identity can go a long way towards alleviating these issues of like all various kinds of discrimination. But when people are like content and happy and like secure in their own identity, then some of these issues are alleviated. That's what I got.
Wow, it sounds really interesting. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for that recap. You're so organized. In my group, the organizational structure and talking about kind of staffing and decision making, does anyone want to give a recap? Or I didn't actually ask in advance if anyone wanted to be a note taker and do this, so if not, I can do it. So that would be a bit my fault. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead. Sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, we kind of just brought up we kind of just started out talking about like what our organizations look like in terms of how diverse they are, how decision making happens, how the hierarchies kind of fit, and just people talked about struggles. I think like across especially organizations that were working in Europe or based in Europe or the US, definitely had a lack of diversity in terms of people of color, and also sometimes with gender. And we also, the topic came up as well with age and stuff. But yeah, I think we had one person in our group who works with a larger organization, and he is not really in any kind of a decision-making position. And so he like found it really, he'd bring the perspective of like, how can people that work within such an organization hold their decision makers, their directors, their board accountable? Like, how can we kind of have that influence if we don't necessarily have it ingrained in our own job descriptions or whatever? So we didn't really come up with a solution there, but I think it is a topic for people, especially either working in bigger organizations or just working in kind of bigger systems. And I think, yeah, one kind of the term that was being thrown around a little bit was like, in terms of diversity, especially Black, Indigenous people of color, was that we're in a bad situation with a lot of the organizations working in social skateboarding. And I think we talked about from Skatestan's perspective that we have, especially at our global level, we have a lot of white people, upper middle class people, and this is probably linked to that being also a majority of people working in international development. Also maybe definitely to a lesser extent now, but with yeah, maybe within skateboarding at some different points. But yeah, so we talked about that. And then something that was interesting that came up was Max, who left, he was talking about board members, and he said, well, is there a possibility to pay board members, because this is a volunteer position, and that means that you're asking people for free time, and how does that look? And we're like, we don't know. Is that allowed? Is there like accountability and conflict of interest issues? So it kind of like comes back to that whole idea of how things are structurally set up. And Monica in Bangladesh also brought up that it's very difficult because she's setting up an NGO from the start, and there's a lot of costs and a lot of time that's required. And it's just like, yeah, it's really limiting who is able to do those sorts of things. So yeah, we didn't really come to any big solutions, but it was really interesting. So maybe group 3, someone wants to go.
Beatrice is gonna present for group three.
Sorry, I was taking notes. Yeah, so in our group we talk mainly about funding and the inequalities within being able to get funding. That's something we already talked about a little bit in the last webinar, and we mentioned that many funding pages systems were like GoFundMe or Kickstarter wouldn't work in other countries that were not first, like Europe, etc. So they gave the example of the GoFundMe working in France and not in Ghana, and the only thing that changed was like the location, and that really is like a structural problem within that that causes a lot of sorry words, yeah, disparities, you know. So we were trying to figure out as well solutions in order to do that. We proposed there were proposed 2 steps in order to how to deal with it. First of all, we thought it would be a good idea to first reach out directly the companies in order to ask them why such a thing is in place, right? And not directly make them feel under attack. And then if that wouldn't really work out, then start signing up petitions, maybe use Skatestan or the Goodpush network and so on in order to reach those goals. Yes, that's my main note.
Thanks, Thea. I'll just add a little bit. We also talked about the comms aspect, so how youth are portrayed in the communications that come from our organizations, and are they portrayed positively? Are we talking about that there's a mutual benefit, like that the facilitators and the organization gain something from working with these people if you're working with youth, and vice versa, the youth are also gaining something. And did you want to say anything, Bia, about like formal grants and some of those, you know, dealing with like these influential money holders?
Yes, well, we did talk about reporting back to the donors, and even then how the language that is used is already showing this disparity. We talked about language being like the target group or at-risk youth, which automatically puts them in that position. So also what was proposed was to, when in terms of mail monitoring, evaluating and learning, just more like sit with the people that you're dealing with, sit with them, hear their stories, and let them the opportunity of them writing their own story and not being more like a test subject.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, so I'm wondering, I don't know, like we have just a few minutes left, so if anyone has any things you want to add at this point, like things that came to mind from hearing what the other group said, or ideas on like what we could do as a community to kind of keep this topic at the forefront, because I get worried that as time goes on, it will not be kind of as important as it has been this year so far. So I don't know if anyone has input you can put in the chat box, or.
I think one theme that I heard come up a couple times is, oh, sorry, go on, Sandy, and then I'll speak after.
No, you can finish, and I will add something after.
I was just gonna say, I've heard it come up a couple times that we should be calling people in, you know, like, so whether it's that the people who are signing up for this kind of activity and discussion are not really the people with the most problematic attitudes all the time. How do we bridge that gap and like reach out, or same with, you know, reaching out to GoFundMe instead of approaching really aggressively and assuming that it's going to be like a brick wall, you know, giving people the opportunity to admit that they don't know something and to improve. Same with like funders that might structure things to be very like top down and not very participant centered. You know, we can choose how we deal with that, and we could also push back a little bit. You know, even though they're the money holders, we can say, actually, you know, this is how we're running it, so we don't have targets because everything is managed by the kids themselves, as an example. So yeah, calling in might be something to explore a little bit more. It also came up like having maybe a webinar or like a panel discussion with people who are, you know, in positions of power and the people seeking grants, and having a discussion about how to better connect these communities so that it's not only, you know, top down or European people like just making all the decisions.
Yeah, so I would love to add something to be really efficient about after this conversation. All of us, we agree that we need to improve the situation. I think Goodpush has an amazing initiative, and we talk about guidelines as soon as we arrive in this webinar. So I think that what we can do, and it will be really efficient, is like all the organizations who have a social project about skateboarding, they sign a guideline actually. We all sign a guideline who includes everything that we mentioned on this call, and maybe we can add more officially. And this way, when you show all the social projects all around the world, we have a label. We have a label that confirms that us, we decide to fight against racism, and we respect this guideline. I think it's already nice to see this overview, and people understand that, yeah, it could be a label that people respect. And when you sign this document, your team has to understand. You make sure that all your strategy about funding respect this, etc., etc. I think just signing a paper is already nice for all of us. And when we mention all the social projects around the world, we make sure that before putting their name everywhere in the world, they sign this guideline. Thanks.
If I may chime in too, thank you so much, Sandy. I think it makes me think about, you know, when someone says, what is something worth? And they'll say it's however much someone's willing to pay for it. Well, if we as organizations are unwilling to participate and engage with organizations who don't respect the proposed guidelines that Sandy had mentioned, then we are able to change the conversation a little bit. It starts with what we're willing to accept. And I think if we can come up with, you know, a little bit of an agreed upon way to act and engage that centers kind of anti-racism and an unwillingness to participate if whoever we're engaging with does not agree, then, you know, we at least can get the conversation started. And, you know, no fight is easy. That may mean sacrifice, and Nike may not want to provide this and that because whatever the case may be. But, you know, I think it's super important to at least be very clear in what our values are and what we hope to promote going forward. And a united front is always, you know, stronger than individuals kind of fighting by themselves, I think. And I hope that was in line with what you were suggesting as well, Sandy.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Would love to just add to that, because I've seen in you know, the sports-based youth development organizations in the States doing a lot of, you know, coming together and advocating for the sector, and, you know, to get more money and to influence and share information for funders to understand, you know, why it's powerful and why it works. And I just think that doing something similar, obviously, with this incredible coalition that we have to influence, because I think the funders and the funding streams is such a fundamental problem. You know, it's like, I just thinking about like where I started and what I wanted to do with Harold Hunter Foundation and where I ended up. It's like, well, I can't do anything if we don't have money. And, you know, like it's sort of like I end up doing things that, you know, I need that money from this foundation and I'm trying to get them to understand, but it's like, you know, we end up, you know, wasting years doing programming that, while it's great, it works great for the kids who probably need it the less and have the most resources, and it's so frustrating. And I just think that, you know, what's special about what we all do with skateboarding and action sports is that we really are serving a type of young person. The type of young person who's going to stick with what we're doing is not being served. You know, they're not joining other types of organizations. And that's always how I position it. It's just sort of like all these other organizations that are doing baseball or whatever else they're doing. It's like, we're working with the kind of kid who doesn't want a coach, who's going to boss them around with a whistle, you know, and like, that's a really important, you know, young person who has extraordinary potential to be an innovator and to be change makers. And, you know, they're rebels. They're the kids who are going to stand up and say, I'm not down with this and I'm not okay with it. They're the ones who are getting forced out of school, you know, and it's just like every other organization, I feel like, that's working in the youth development sort of sector and even in sports is working with kids who are a little bit more conformist, a little bit more willing to follow the rules, you know, who are just oftentimes like, they're just kind of creaming from the top, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, all the good resourced kids who, you know, kind of demographically look right, but like, you know, are the ones who are going to attend, and then all the data has to be about whether they attended and did they, it's just like, you know, all of that is garbage to me, when we are really well positioned to work with the kids who everybody else is leaving behind and who's falling through the cracks. And so if these funders really want to walk the walk, then they need to be willing to work with organizations like us who are trying to work with the sort of more complicated or difficult kids, but, you know, who are being left behind. And, you know, we need to like sort of together enforce, say that, and be able to back it up with some research that they can listen to, and just say like, you know, you need to let us drive the way things go, and then be willing to not, you know, dictate all the time how the money should best be spent, you know, and how we should do what we're doing. It's like when you go to an after school, you know, or out of school funder who's insisting that you have to be doing programming that meets all the, you know, it's going to have to be every day after school, and it's going to have to be full time in the summer, and like all these different things that are going to cost an insane amount of money. And then they're like, and I'll give you $25,000, which is like 1/10 of what you need to execute it. It's just like, you know, come on now, this is ridiculous, you know? Anyway, sorry.
No, that's good. I like the energy. I think, Sandy, you have your hand up. I don't know if you want to speak again or if that's a residual hand, but if you do want to jump in. I think that the idea of like a kind of, I don't know what to call it, guidelines, declaration, commitment, or whatever, I think is super awesome. And it's like a really concrete thing that we can work on. So we could start like a Google Doc and share it around with everybody, and people can just put in stuff, and we can work on it together, and then maybe share it out as a sort of just something that people can sign on to, figure out the best way to do that. But I think it would be really awesome. We can frame it in terms of different principles, anti-racist action, trying to kind of show what our focus is on for funders. What you just said, Jessica, made me think also that we have our 3rd annual survey of social skateboarding projects is running right now, and there's a lot of questions in there that relate to some of the things that were talked about today. And I think that's a really good source of data for us to show funders. It also, as we do it every year, we can show like our growth and our development in the sector. So as a follow-up to this, I'll send a link to that survey, and if every one of you hasn't done it yet for your organization, could fill that out, that would be really awesome, and we could feed that into this kind of commitment sort of thing. I don't know what we want to call it, but I think it's a really cool idea.
Thanks so much for those suggestions. I'm sorry, Sandy, I forgot to mention that Sandy was in the last webinar, and also in this one, we've been able to build off of a lot of the ideas that Sandy shared last time. So she was the other co-speaker with Himbali. So thanks so much, Sandy, bringing tons of great ideas to the table again.
Thank you. I appreciate actually the initiative of Goodpush. So thank you so much.
Great, and I think we've created a space in the Goodpush forum to continue the conversation from today. So that's another space where we can keep discussing like what could this guideline look like, and I like the idea that it's an anti-racist guideline to begin with. I think there's also work that could be done to expand that to be anti-oppressive, but I think that it's good to focus on this, especially in the international development space, where that's the probably biggest like oppressive dynamic that's playing out, where it's people with financial and race privilege and people that don't have those or both those things sometimes. So thank you very much. I don't know how much more time people have, if people want to stay on the call, but I'm mindful of people's schedules.
I would be really
so I don't want to go over time.
If people could use, if could either put in the chat or using this participant feature, just like say yes if you'd be interested to like contribute on this kind of guideline, either like just looking over at it and putting comments or directly writing part of it. Yeah, if you're interested, just use this yes thing or put it in the chat. Ah, cool, we have some people, so then I can make sure to follow up with y'all. Nice. Okay, cool. Okay, a lot of people. Excellent. This is going to be great. I'm very excited to do something all together on this on a global level. So yeah, thanks everybody. I don't know if people want to stick around, but otherwise we can end this, and I'll send up the follow-ups for this in an email. Cool. Anyway.
Thanks, Rhiannon. Thanks, Wendy. I think it was a really productive hour. Really good.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
So you'll hear from us soon, and we'll get cracking on this because we are very efficient people. Change the world.
Yes,
all right. Great. Thanks. Have a good day, evening, wherever you are.
We'll also send a recap email to try to capture some of the other actions that came out of it, because I think there's other things to follow up on, but this was sort of the most tangible thing that we could all get involved in, and it seems like it would be pretty far-reaching. But we won't lose sight of the plan to put pressure on GoFundMe and some of the other ideas as well.
Yep.
Cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.